Guys, what's up? So, in this particular lesson, I'll teach you a very important skill as to how to bookmark any particular chapter of any book. We will start with the economic survey, and I'll just tell you what do you mean by bookmarking, which is the important segment which you're supposed to study, and once you're done with that, only then you proceed with reading the book. Otherwise, they're so thick books, these entire book economic survey, they will consume your entire months. So let us get started. So guys, before we move forward, I would like to tell you that economic survey was released about 1.5 months ago, and still you have to revise it properly. And same with the India yearbook. Okay, they are like double-edged sword. If you don't read them at all, then you will find that questions are asked in the UPSC. But if you read them too much, then you will find that only 1 or 2 questions were asked from them. So you have to find a very delicate balance in it, and they will not only help you in just prelims, it will help you in mains as well. So economic survey 2017-18. So I'll start with chapter number 1. Like I have already made a course on the entire economic survey, the first volume, so which you can check out on unacademy.com. So before we move forward, I'll just like to say that this is my personal opinion and you might differ from it, so that is perfectly fine. But the idea here is not that this figure is important or that figure is not important. The major idea and which I want to discuss here is that bookmarking helps. So if you decide, even in a book like Lakshmikant, if you decide before going hand that fundamental right is more important than any other lesson and so on and so forth, so that becomes very, very important. Okay, so economic survey 2017-18. So the first and the foremost thing, when you open the economic survey, there is a preface and which talks about the 10 new facts on the Indian economy. So that becomes very, very important. Now this is not part of any chapter or anything. This is part of the preface. So, but without reading these 10 new facts, I think it can be a direct question in the exam also. Which of the following is not true about Indian economy? A direct question, absolutely direct question. And they will ask 4 facts. One of them will be slightly twisted, or they can ask 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 4, all those kind of questions. So please go through these 10 new facts on the Indian economy without fail, and this will really help you. Now chapter 1 has total pages of 31, and the name of the chapter is State of the Economy, an analytical overview and outlook for policy. So obviously it is an overview of the Indian economy, the entire economy, how it has fared in last year and how it is supposed to fare in the next year. So overview in short term, you can start reading with these paragraphs 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Okay, and then you can move forward. So in the medium term, these are the paragraphs which are important, but while reading the paragraphs, there are a lot of figures which are given here. Okay, so these figures have some data. Now again, UPSC is very fond of asking this data, and if you do not write it in mains, then you get mediocre marks. So if your answers are not backed up by statistics and significant numbers, then UPSC is bound to give you mediocre marks. Okay, so here figure 4 is manufacturing gross value added in percentage of GDP. Here figure 5 is manufacturing exports and trade balance. So they are basically talking about what is the gross value added through this in the percentage of GDP. Here they talk about exports and trade balance, very, very important for any economy, not just India, for any economy these numbers are very, very important. Now there are some boxes also. So box number 2 is saying that how demonetization is a success because it has increased the number of taxpayers. Obviously, if you have lot of cash, let's say you have 50 lakh rupees worth of cash, so government does not know that you have cash, right? So now this cash will be basically uploaded into the banks because now it is an e-form, and finally you have to pay tax on that. So that's how the increase in taxpayers happen post demonetization. And do export incentive work? So if you incentivize the industries or the businesses on export, does it really work? So the clothing package of 2016, so how the apparel industry is booming and what government is doing to improve the status of the garment industry or the clothing industry or the apparel industry, it is the same thing. Now box 4 talks about the exchange rate, political economy of interest. So this is also something which you're supposed to read. Now you have to go through the recent developments. Okay. Now agriculture, the real GV and real revenue. So whenever you encounter the term real, what do you mean by real? Real means anything which is post-inflation. So one is nominal. So nominal GDP rate will include inflation. On the other hand, real GDP growth rate is like post-inflation, over and above inflation. So here these are the important paragraphs. So you can mark them out before you start to read. So that these are the paragraphs I'll read. It will take you 1 hour to bookmark the entire book. But trust me, like, you don't get distracted after that. So recent development, the global outlook, baseline and risks. And here this figure is important. And new estimates of formal sector non-farm payrolls. Okay. Then understanding India's decoupling. What do you mean by decoupling? See, decoupling is a phenomena where you are not functioning according to what world economy is going through. So for example, world economy is going through crisis, but you are growing. On the other hand, world economy is growing and you are not growing. So this phenomena is called as decoupling. So why is India undergoing decoupling? So there are 4 reasons for that. One is like implementation of GST, one is implementation of demonetization, and there are 2 more reasons which are covered in this economic survey, and I have also covered in the course, so you can go through that. But the key point here is that paragraphs are there, 1.4, 1.45, these are the important paragraphs, and this phenomenon can be asked in your mains exam, or in prelims they can simply ask, what do you mean by decoupling in the context of economy? Okay, so when it is decoupled from the world or the rest of the countries, that phenomena is called as decoupling, and it is temporary. Then you will see India's comparative growth, then real policy interest rate in India and selected economies, then growth of manufacturing export value and growth of manufacturing import value. And finally, outlook for 2017-18 economic activity. So these are the important paragraphs. Then real and nominal rural wages growth, inflation, CPI and its variants. There are no boxes here. Then macroeconomic indicators like current account balance, always important in the percentage of GDP. Then fiscal developments, see, obviously it is always important to know your fiscal deficit. So just go through these paragraphs. And understanding GST revenue performance. This chapter is slightly more important, others are not so important. The first chapter usually have an overview, so that's why it becomes more important. Then finally, outlook for 2018-19. So these are the paragraphs and these are the boxes that do government market borrowing reflect the underlying fiscal deficit. So I hope you have understood what we are trying to achieve here. So thank you for watching this lesson. Have an awesome day.